Welcome back, everyone, to the 21 AVA series. I'm joined by Mr. Caleb Foster today.
Oh, ho, ho.
Caleb and I are going to be talking about the Lake Chelan AVA today. So AVAs in Washington. So today we're going to be tasting a little bit of wine from Tsillan Cellars. So
Ah,
while Caleb opens up the bottle, I'm going to go ahead and touch on some quick data points of the Lake Chelan AVA. One of the cooler AVAs in Washington,
I've been
not
icing my
temperature-wise.
Riesling down in cold water, as cold as the lake water from Lake Chelan, which is very cold.
Oof. Yeah, I don't swim in cold water. I think we've talked about this before. I'm a hot tub guy. All right. So Lake Chelan is one of the most northern AVAs, established in 2009. It is a sub AVA within the larger Columbia Valley AVA. Vineyards are mainly planted along the southern and east portions of the lake. The defining feature is the lake effect. The area sits at somewhat high elevation, around 1,100 feet. And Lake Chelan stands apart from many of the southern Columbia Valley sites with unique soils shaped by glacier till rather than the Missoula floods. So, with that said, let's get some wine in the glass and let's dive into this, Caleb.
Yeah, boy, I can smell that beautiful wine from here. What an interesting tasting this will be because we're going to taste Riesling, which is really good in a cool climate, and Grenache, which, as we know, is really good in a warm climate. And I bet they're both going to be beautiful in their own right.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. I love both those varietals a lot. I was smelling this Riesling. I popped the bottles beforehand, and because Caleb does a better job at opening that bottle on camera than I do, so
Beautiful 2024 Riesling. New stuff, very small production. For those of you who've been up there, you know what it's like. These beautiful little perches of these beautiful little benches looking over the lake and these just absolutely idyllic spots. And it's been really developed by farmers who farmed there for a long time, cherry growers, because it was a really special spot for cherries. And as we know, anywhere that's good for cherries in Washington is really good for wine.
So, Caleb, you've mentioned quite a few times that grapes grow well where cherries grow. What's the logic behind that?
Yeah, so Ken Walliser actually told me that little sentence long ago when he was helping me find some ideal places in the rocks. If cherries can survive the early spring year, it's a good sign that that area is relatively frost free. And if it's relatively frost free, it's really good for grapes because grapes are about to break bud right after cherries.
Here it is. So, Tsillan Cellars is super cool, Tuscan-inspired property. They have a full on-site restaurant, Sorrento's. I think that this is definitely one of the places you should visit when you're in Lake Chelan because this Riesling's fantastic. At $28 a bottle, it's a really good value too. Um,
Wow. Really?
yeah, that's
It's a
pretty
great
cool.
value in Riesling. You know, I buy a lot of really lovely German Riesling. I love aged Riesling, and I love hunting down special vineyards in the West Coast. What I love about this is how incredibly fresh it is. It's really expressive because it has this huge ginger tone. I love ginger
Mm,
in Riesling, that gingerish character. It's very fresh, it's bright, it's quite nearly dry. So it's really expressing its sight in that way. Really clean, really well made, just a really expressive Riesling that feels like it's in really clean, washed out soils. I mean, there's a clean, clear, fresh, bright tone to this wine, which just reminds me of the place.
beautiful. So, tell me a little bit about the Lake Chelan AVA. I understand it's glacier till. How does that differ from the Missoula floods?
Yeah, so that glacial till is from the glacier that filled the lake, and it did its own work there on its own without having a relationship with the same larger Missoula floods. And Missoula floods are the silty left behind where we grow a lot of fruit. Say in Walla Walla and the Columbia Valley, at Sagemore, and in parts of Yakima, you've got the silt. This is dominated by a washed out rocky benches. And just that simply means that they're new. There's not much in them. It's kind of more like Grave in Bordeaux than an old soil like the Loire
Okay.
or Champagne, or other old soil environments. It's a new soil, so it's just rocks, and the vines will dig through that and get the water and get the little bit of nutrient they need, and it's an interesting spot. So it's relatively cool up there, but the rock's going to pick up a certain amount of warmth and carry some warmth in them that they don't carry necessarily in the Luss, like at Seven Hills, say. The French call Luss a cold soil.
Okay.
It holds a cold temperature longer in the spring and gets colder faster in the fall. And it doesn't warm up like the rocks of the Rhone Valley or the rocks here do.
Is that because a lot of time low soil holds a little bit more moisture as well in
It
it?
does, and it's that's right, and it's denser in position. So I mean, you pick it up, it gets all soft and light in your hands, but where it is, it's relatively dense, and that means the air can't penetrate it, right? But when
Yeah,
you go over, say, to the rocks, to the gravels, air literally penetrates down into those rocks.
yeah,
So, what does that mean to taste? What does that mean to flavor? What it means is that the vine is able to get going down the year in its development earlier in a warm soil. In a warmer soil, it's going to activate in the spring faster. It's going to go into growing sooner. It's going to grow more greenery. And when it grows more greenery sooner, it flowers sooner. And when it flowers sooner, it gets into a cycle of ripeness that brings it into the warmer part of the year. The later you develop fruit, the more you're rotating your growing into through the summer and into the depth of fall, into the cooler hours of the season. Just to finish the thought, in the flavor, why does that matter? It means in a cool site like Chelan, you want a warm soil because you need to ripen this Riesling. You're coming in on some cool temperatures in the fall. The sooner you start the race, the more likely you're going to get there.
yeah. All right, I love it. Just to circle back on your density of soils, if you folks at home think about like a jar filled with ping pong balls versus a jar filled with sand, obviously you're
Wow.
going to have a lot more air around that, where sand is going to be a lot more compact and harder for air to get through. So that's
Voila.
uh, that's my novice take on everything.
Well
Um,
done.
all right. So what kind of, so I know that we talk about a lot of basalt here in the Missoula flood impact. This isn't a basalt based soil. Is that correct? More of a,
Right. No. Walking around, being up there, no, it's all these gravelly benches of rocks from the environment, which are not basalt. They're metamorphic and maybe a little igneous, but lots of metamorphic rocks up there, which is quite different.
okay, excellent. How does that affect texture and aromatics in wine? What are kind of some of the different experiences you'll get?
Yeah. It just reminds your point makes me think that, boy, there was a time when we all were so much closer to farmers and closer to the farm. We'd live on the farm, we'd walk across the farm, we'd visit a farm for food. And so the reason to talk about the soils made so much sense. It made sense to everybody when you talked about the soils. And of course, you would explain your wine through your soil because that's obvious. It's so important. It's a defining factor to the wine. That's why we're talking about it still. And yet, I don't know, maybe a lot of people are like, what does the wine taste like? But we know that taste is emitted and sort of resonates. It's like the soil's an instrument. And are we playing a cello or a violin? Are we playing a flute or a saxophone? Are we playing a drum? I mean, it literally will play the same song with a different sensibility. And so you can plant Riesling anywhere you want, but the soil will massively impact the arriving character of the wine. So what is the difference? You get different chemical elements in metamorphic wines than you get in, say, a basalt. Basalt's
Okay.
got a lot of iron and metamorphics don't, and calcium and other things that plants need that surprisingly really influence flavor in the grapes.
I love it. So I'm going to go off on a little bit of a Riesling tangent here because it is one of my favorite white varietals, and I think not enough people appreciate how glorious Riesling is in all of its
This
forms.
one.
I like this one. So thank you, Chelan Cellars, again. It's a really fantastic expression of what Washington Riesling can do when it's
That
planted
is.
in the right sites. And I think planting things in the right site is very important. Where are some of the great Rieslings in the world grown? Classic regions like Germany. Where should they be grown, and what soil types are they necessarily on? Are they on the same kind of glacier till stuff, or are they on kind of a different soil profile in other places where the weather is more impactful?
Yeah. I have not actually walked the land and spent the whole year in European Riesling land. But that said, one of the things about old world wine is because they've had hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of years to figure out what to make and what to grow, what you definitely want in your wine is you want flavor. So if you grow red wines up in parts of Germany and they never ripen, well, why are you doing that? You don't actually like the wines you want to make. So you're going to grow something that's going to ripen, and Riesling ripens in cold places. So cold meaning we're talking 10 to 20 to 30 days less warmth and ripening time than other parts of the world,
Okay.
like Sicily or middle of Spain or even warm places of southern France. Riesling grows in north, up by mountain ranges, in the slopes below mountain ranges, in the cold, and it's one of the few grapes that you can ripen there, and that's why we grow it there. So Alsace, Germany, and then what they found was that some of the greatest spots in Germany on the Ruhr Mosel Sauer is that when this river snaking along, when the bend faces south, you get this extraordinarily ripe and special Riesling. So you get these different, you have Riesling all across it, but you have very, super superior high price vineyards facing south and perfectly good but normal vineyards facing north, and back and forth and back and forth. So a place like Chelan has these advantages because it has both south, west, and north facing slopes across the lake. Slant slopes, not steep, not like the Mosel Sauer, but it's takes advantage of angle to capture sun and wind. But it's just such a really pretty place. I mean, I don't want to miss the fact that, that is a playground in Washington and it's fun to be up there. It's beautiful to be up there from all angles. The town's small and cute, great food, great places to stay. If you're really adventurous, take the boat all the way up to Sahikin, a tiny little mountain forest town. Shockingly good wine because really smart growers who've probably been there 2, 3 generations now.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of touched on this like in private conversation, but I think one of the key factors in an area like Lake Chelan is the ability to irrigate. I understand those soils are very
Yes.
well draining. Yeah,
Yep, yep. Up there, it's just so it's still a blue sky desert. It's still, doesn't rain, despite being close to the mountains. And this next glass is a little colder, and it's really nice. And so, yeah, you still need water, and they
yeah.
can do it perfectly there.
And I think that's one of the things that we'll touch on throughout this entire series over and over again is one of the reasons why Washington is so special is our amount of sunshine we get, the diurnal shift, and our ability to irrigate. I think those are three very big factors for Washington State that make it a very great region to grow so many different varietals so well. Back to your
Yep.
comment on Riesling earlier on how it's a shorter ripening period, and we've talked a lot about the clock and the way it moves. So obviously, clearly, you can grow Riesling in a warm region. So, with that considered, one of the reasons it's maybe a disadvantage to grow Riesling in a warm region is that because it has that shorter clock and bud break happens around the same time, you don't want necessarily a wine to come into full maturity middle of August where it's super hot here. I think we want to preserve Riesling's acidity. So it's nice to go out in the cooler regions where bud break might be a little later and you get that ripening in September versus August. Is that kind of a fair thought process on that?
Okay, if the plant was shaped and looked the same to you when you walked up to it in those two places, a hot and a cold place, yes, they would be very, very different harvests. But that's not what we used to do. We used to grow a lot of Riesling in the hot spots of Columbia Valley, and the way you could get away with murder was to grow Riesling in a hot spot, grow 12 tons per acre. Now we're talking that's pushing 5 to 6 to 7 cases of wine on a vine.
Yeah, that's
That's
extraordinary.
just a lot of mass. But you're so hot, heat generates sugar and leaves generate sugar. You'd grow a big plant, you'd grow a lot of fruit, and it would ripen in late October because it took that train to pull that mass of fruit all the way through the season and load it with sugar to the end of October.
Yeah.
But the old days, the old like 1980s and 1990s Rieslings, man, they grew 10 tons an acre.
And I think that's one of the things that makes farmers so special. So what Caleb's talking about here is crop loading. So as we go through, you have your fruit sets that happen on a vine and they come every so often, usually spaced one or two hands apart in terms of your fruit sets. And each one of those fruit sets might produce 2 to 4 clusters depending on how you prune things. So you can really crop load in order to control ripening levels. And one of the things that we do throughout the season is kind of assess that fruit level, assess the growing season, and we will leave fruit on to kind of give you an insurance policy. But then once you get towards the ripening stage, you can drop fruit and really spike your sugar levels pretty quick and get to that last ripening period. So when that energy is further dispersed, it takes longer for that grape to ripen. It's kind of the whole thought process behind this pruning process and the amount of fruit you leave on a vine. Is that a fair assessment, Caleb?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It really is. And that's reason why you match your variety to the climate and you want to get to ripeness. Riesling ripens faster. Now, I mean, in these fabulous mountain environments, you're maybe hoping you can get one bottle a plant
Yeah.
in some of these places. I don't know about here. They probably grew maybe two, maybe as many as three bottles a plant out here at Lake Chelan. I'm guessing. Winemaker can tell how well the fruit was cared for in the vineyard by its incredible aromatic freshness. So it's got that flawless character.
Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing. It doesn't have faults, and the beauty of it shines. And that's a great indication. That's a clear indication of how clean the fruit was in the vineyard. And the only way you do that is if you really shape your vine to be for fine wine.
Shout out to Nick Stevens for growing this fantastic wine and for helping us get these wines acquired. Thank you so much, Lynn. Let's taste some Grenache. Because I'm just chugging this Riesling. I think I'm halfway done with the bottle.
No, professionals know how to do this.
I think Riesling's a super cool grape. I think what we really just highlighted on top of everything else is the power of farming and why it's not just putting a plant in the ground and harvesting at the end of the year. It takes work. It takes effort to make great wine. The reason we do these kind of things is to create the highest quality wine as possible that people want to drink, because ultimately wine is an art form. We really want to express the best that a site can do. And in doing that, we make a wine that's hopefully more appealing to the public, and they feel the spark of what Washington wine is. And
Absolutely. And the farming in Washington has been a really very strong silent revolution of incredible quality. And I've seen a massive shift from the attitudes in the 80s and 90s to today, where if you're growing wine grapes, you're really interested in the quality of the wine.
this wine has some texture. I was,
Mm.
from the side it was at, I was expecting a little thinner body. This wine's got some grip to it. It's got some power.
They're saying this is 15 alcohol, which I get it. One of the things that so interesting, different vintages here. This is 23, and the Riesling was 24, but that's not the biggest reason why. 23 was warm. It was average to early-ish flowering, and a nice warm, not too hot, but warm season. So really successful. Wow, what a good year for Grenache. So interesting because it doesn't have that huge sort of what I call blousy, like, oh my God. This is a little bit brighter, red cherry, brighter pomegranate, aromatic in tone, fruit tone, great acid, which I love about this.
It's certainly
My
not
first
Spanish.
time tasting Grenache from the lake.
Same. And I'm a huge fan of Grenache. I think Grenache takes many forms on. This is clearly very different than the Grenache we get out of the Rocks District or out of Walla Walla or even
Oh,
Yakima Valley. Yakima Valley is great for Rhone varietals, but this has got this lean freshness and this incredible grip. I mean, it latches on. There's beautiful tannin structure here. So this is definitely has its stamp of Lake Chelan. Unique, distinct, really cool here.
I bet I'm salivating for like a fatty Northwest salmon. Like, wow,
Ugh.
this might be amazing with our local fish. Whoa.
Yeah. As long as you don't overcook it. People that overcook salmon are the worst. They're the worst. So just a quick plug on Caleb and I. If you guys are liking this video, please give us a like and subscribe. Shout out to the winery as well for giving us these bottles to taste. We're gonna do an episode that is literally talking about the vintages throughout Washington. What was your first year in the wine industry, Caleb?
I helped out in 91, but my first full vintage was 92.
Okay, so you remember the year in 91. So we're going to go 91 forward. I'm going to task Caleb with getting a bottle from each one of those vintages. Just kidding.
Okay, here we go.
Impossible task. That's an impossible task. But if you had the chance to try older Washington wine, it's super cool. I've had some older 95 dates that are just still locked in with what they do. It's really cool. So yeah,
Indeed.
look out for that episode down the road. All right.
Yes,
Well,
join
that's
us, everybody. That'll be a really fun episode. We'll talk about Washington history, how it's changed, the amazing people, the evolution of wineries, the disappearance of some, and the ongoing gorgeousness that is Washington state wine.
it's an ever evolving industry. It's an ever shifting industry. So, all right, guys, cheers to Washington wine. Cheers to Tsillan Cellars, and cheers to Lake Chelan AVA.
Cheers.
That was good. I like that.